Twins are always an adorable surprise for their families, and here are several intriguing aspects about them that make them special. For starters, it is believed that twins share a deeper, sometimes telepathic connection, often attributed to their close bond. Furthermore, while identical twins share the same genes, their environments can cause differences in how those genes are expressed, leading to personality and health differences. The study of twins is of highly importance in genetics research because it helps scientists separate the effects of nature, which involves genetics, and nurture, which entails environment. Today's case takes us to a pair of twins who are far from adorable. Stay tuned with us as we unfold the crimes of the Spahalski brothers.
In the case of the Spahalski brothers, we have a unique opportunity to trace the psychology of two cold-blooded killers related by blood and birth. In a chilling case of nature versus nurture, we can see what happens when something goes wrong in the genetic code. With 5 victims between them and a trail of prison sentences, the Spahalski twins are notorious for the terror they inspired and the lack of remorse for their crimes. What could be the reason for such unwarranted evil?
Hey guys, welcome back to Crimeco, your go-to channel for some intriguing and incredible true crime stories. Before we continue with today's case, remember to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. Help this true crime community grow even more. So buckle up and get ready to go on a wild ride with us. Robert and Stephen Spahalski were born and brought up in Elmira, New York by their parents up until their divorce. The twins' parents separated when the brothers were at a tender age of 12. After the life they knew crumbled down into pieces, they found comfort in each other, developing a stronger bond between them. Divorce may have been a major catalyst for the twins' behavior. They had a pretty rebellious childhood, and as usual, people always hinder that every teenager goes through a phase like that. Only that this phase spread over their lives when Robert had a run-in with the law for the first time at the age of 16. He was accused of driving a stolen vehicle, to which he pleaded guilty and had to spend 15 weeks in a juvenile holding center. He was also charged with arson for setting on fire a stage curtain and a flag at his school. These weren't any crimes worthy of being labeled as gruesome and heinous crimes, but they were a great gateway for Stephen to transition into his life of crime. It was 1971, and Stephen was working at a hotel called Elmira Heights when he murdered 48-year-old Ronald Ripley, a local store owner who allegedly made sexual advances against him without his consent. Stephen was only 17 years old then, only a year older than her twin brother when he first started his criminal path. Also, Stephen was the first of the twin brothers to kill. The police investigated the scene of the crime and went around in loops, ending up with cold leads involving his car, which was parked 45 minutes from the hotel beside a bridge. Even after looking up the criminal past of Stephen, the police did not consider him to be a suspect. The autopsy report revealed that the killer had snuck behind Ripley and smashed his head in with a hammer. During the investigation, the police found out that Robert, Stephen's twin brother, was already facing some heavy criminal charges and was incarcerated due to violating parole at the Chemung County Jail. But what surprised the police was that, during Ripley's murder investigation, Stephen, who was once again questioned about the murder, nonchalantly admitted his involvement and pleaded guilty. Stephen was also sent to the Chemung County Jail, where the twin brothers spent some time at the same facility. For the murder of Ripley, Stephen was sentenced to 25 years in prison, and a few months later, Robert was released. For a while, Robert kept a low profile, until July 1973, when he was once again brought in front of the court for allegedly stealing $3,000 worth of cash and goods from a music store and was found to be guilty. He was sentenced to serve a period of 5 years in jail, but he got out in September 1975, probably due to good behavior. However, freedom didn't last long, and in 1976, he was charged with third-degree burglary for breaking and entering a high school. This time he was sentenced from 2 to 5 years at Auburn Correctional Facility. After being sentenced to prison, Robert found out that he ended up in the same facility his twin brother Stephen was imprisoned too. In 1978, one of the twin brothers and another inmate attempted to escape the correctional facility while hiding in the false bottom of an army truck. They were caught, but one of the twins managed to evade the officers when he ran into a vocational auto body shop at the prison where both brothers worked. But the pair confused the guards as to who the escapee was, as they both looked very much alike at the time. The twins liked playing these little shenanigans with the guards for fun and couldn't decide which twin was guilty. The officer responsible for charging the wanted escapee just wrote Spahalski as the runner, and just as a precaution, both twins were put in solitary confinement. In November 1979, Robert was released, while Stephen still had several years left on his sentence. In April 1980, in the city of Rochester, he began working as a mechanic, and it seemed like he was finally leaving his criminal life behind. But old habits die hard, and in July 1981, he was once again deep into trouble. Robert was charged with stealing a coin collection worth $15,000 together with an accomplice. For this, he was sentenced to 2 to 5 years in the infamous maximum security prison known as the Attica Correctional Facility. Robert later got released after serving time in jail for this crime. You would think that after a life of being in and out of prison, he would eventually learn his lesson. However, in 1978, he was found guilty of aggravated burglary in Monroe County and was sent back to Attica. Once he got out in 1989, he moved for good to Rochester, New York. While in Rochester, Robert began a new life that would lead him to abuse hard substances, and soon he became addicted. He had to rely on street hustles, shady businesses with illegal substances, and prostitution jobs. It's worth noting that due to his odd way of life, he also contracted HIV, which would affect his health and well-being for the rest of his life. It was December 1990 when Robert would go on to murder his first victim, Maureen Armstrong. The woman in question was a prostitute who was killed by strangulation with an electrical cord and was found only wearing one single sock. It was believed that Robert and Armstrong had a disagreement after their sexual encounter, so Robert decided to end her life. Robert wasn't caught, and he even had the audacity to stay near the crime scene and talk to the police, indicating that he knew Armstrong and that they were friends. Perhaps, since he got away with it, he grew the courage to do the same when the opportunity presented. A few months later, Robert's girlfriend, Adrienne Berger, was found deceased in her apartment. However, her body was discovered several days later after her demise, and the city was under a heatwave, which heavily contributed to her body decay. It was the stench that made its way out of her place that alerted her neighbors about a possible crime. Due to the state of the body, the forensic team in charge of Berger's autopsy could not collect enough evidence to determine the cause of death. The police got wind of Berger and Robert's relationship, but after being questioned, he was let go since they couldn't find hard evidence of his involvement. A few months later, Robert was singled out and stopped by the police, who asked for his name, to which he replied, Charles Grande, and after a quick checkup, the police let him go on his way. Charles Grande was actually Robert's third victim. Robert had killed him in his bedroom in Webster, New York, and his body was only found out by police 2 days later. The cause of death indicated that Grande was beaten to death with a hammer, which was very similar to Stephen's first murder. This detail, although gruesome, was quite interesting since Robert chose the same method that his twin used to murder his, also first male victim. It was later revealed that Robert had murdered Grande due to a disagreement between them regarding payment for Robert's sexual services. Once again, Robert was clear of murder charges, as the police still couldn't link him to it, but he was convicted of identity theft since he impersonated Grande, and it was Grande's car that he was driving when the police detained him for a routine checkup. Robert kept on having a few encounters with the law for several offenses, starting with but not limited to burglary and theft. Almost 10 years passed by, and Robert maintained a very low profile during those years after Grande's death. However, the beginning of the end started when Robert murdered her friend and neighbor, Vivian Irizarry, in 2005. Robert had been an addict for several years by then, and one of the worst side effects he showed had to do with vivid hallucinations. That was the case when he murdered Irizarry. That day, he was completely out of himself and believed that his friend was turning into a demon, so she needed to be vanquished. In order to do this, Robert strangled her and threw her body in the basement. During interrogation, Robert revealed that he burst into tears when he realized what he had done, so he decided to cleanse her friend's body and bathed her. Next, he decided to move the body to the basement. Robert's crimes were taking a heavy toll on his conscience, so he decided to turn himself in at the Rochester police station days after Uri's murder. While being interrogated, he decided that enough was enough and confessed to all of his murders and pleaded guilty. The only defense Robert's defense could present in court was that he couldn't have developed an intent to kill due to his years-old substance addiction. His lawyer went as far as presenting in court 2 small bags that contained doses of Robert's illegal substance of preference and stated that the demon's here and it affected his mind. But the prosecution didn't buy the strategy and was rejected by the court after a polygraph test revealed that Robert was well aware of what he was doing. He was found guilty of 4 counts of second-degree intentional murder, and it was also added an extra count of felony murder while committing a robbery. Robert would never walk the streets again since he was sentenced to life in prison. On the other hand, Stephen, the other twin, was released from prison in 2009 but couldn't help himself, and he robbed a bank just 6 months after his release. He was caught and was sent back to jail. He was released again in 2016 after completing his sentence. When he learned about his twin brother's crime, he was visibly surprised and only stated, "I thought I was the only murderer in the family." By the time Robert was convicted, he was 52 years old, to which Stephen simply stated that his brother was now gone and that he would never see the light of day as a free man. When investigating for this case, it was easy to point out that serial killers weren't uncommon in the 20th century in the US. Some of them were even more unhinged and devious than the Spahalski brothers, but this particular case stood out due to the familial bond between the killers, which led people to believe in the so-called criminal genes. The fact that both brothers ended up following a similar path in life, even after being separated for several years, makes people question, is this how genetics works with twins? Was this impulse to kill deeply ingrained in their DNA? Cases like these have always been exaggerated by the media to create sensational news. Interviews and editorials on serial killers have always resulted in an increased amount of romanticization of them among the public instead of portraying what they actually are. The case of the Spahalski brothers wasn't even that interesting or uncommon until the twins angle came along, diverting people's attention towards something that wasn't very unique in any sense. Well, folks, that's all for today. Thank you for staying all the way up to the end of this video. If you're down for this type of content, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'll also love to know what you think about our content, so leave a comment and tell us all about it. See you next time.